So I'm on the side of Glastonbury Tor. I'm actually sat next to one of my favourite trees on the side of the Tor. This is a really lovely special spot. The Tor rises up just behind me there. You can't see it from here, I'm afraid. We're actually situated here directly on the Mary line. You may have heard of the Michael and Mary lines, the earth energy or dragon paths, which snake their way across England from St Michael's Mount in Cornwall to Hopton-on-Sea in Norfolk. And they do some really interesting things on Glastonbury Tor. And I'm actually sat right in the flow of the Mary line, which is obviously the feminine of the two lines. And yeah, they snake all the way across England, going to some really interesting places. One of them is obviously Glastonbury, where they get quite creative on the Tor. And they go through many other sacred places all across the country. They go through Bury St Edmunds, which is just up the road from where I used to live. So yeah, check out, if you're interested, check out the seminal work by Paul Broadhurst and Hamish Miller called The Sun and the Serpent. Really interesting book, that. Anyway, I digress. So I'm here today making my way around the Runic wheel. We have now, we are almost at the point of southwest on the wheel now. This is 2 p.m. if you look at it as a time wheel, and the rune I'm here to chant today is the rune Uruz, which is its Germanic name. In Anglo-Saxon and Old Norse it's simply called Ur. So the traditional meaning of this rune in Anglo-Saxon at least is that of the Aurochs, and these were great primitive ox, I suppose, large wild cattle that would roam across the plains of Europe, Asia and North Africa. They were hunted to extinction. The last one is said to have died in Poland in 1627. So these were, amazing large primeval cattle. So that, at least in the Anglo-Saxon, is the meaning of this rune. So this is the second rune in the Futhark. It's the first rune in the Uthark, and I spoke a bit about that last time. You'll perhaps see from what I'm going to say today why its placement as the first rune fits very well with some of the energies of this rune. So this rune came into its runic half month on the 14th of July. It peaked a few days ago on the 21st, and the last day of its runic half month is the 28th of July. It's a bit breezy today, but it's a lovely summer's day despite the breeze. So we're really lucky because Julius Caesar actually wrote about the Aurochs and their relationship to the Germanic tribes in his Gallic Wars in chapter 6. So I'm just going to read you the contemporary evidence that we have from Julius Caesar. Those animals which are called Uri, these are a little below the elephant in size, and of the appearance, colour and shape of a bull. Their strength and speed are extraordinary. They spare neither man nor wild beasts which they have espied. These the Germans take with much pains in pits and kill them. The young men harden themselves with this exercise and practice themselves in this sort of hunting, and those who have slain the greatest number of them, having produced the horns in public to serve as evidence, receive great praise. But not even when taken very young can they be rendered familiar to men and tamed. The size, shape and appearance of their horns differ much from the horns of our oxen. These they anxiously seek after, and bind at the tips with silver, and use as cups at their most sumptuous entertainments. So it's amazing that we've actually got this piece of writing from Julius Caesar, which explains the relationship between the Aurochs and the Germanic tribes. So here we see links with both manhood and initiation. So young men would have needed strength, courage, bravery, tenacity, skill, cunning. All of these attributes would have been needed to have taken on and fought these Aurochs, which by the sounds of it were fearsome beasts. And that would have been a ritual initiation into manhood, or perhaps into a warrior class. We also have writings which tell us that they would fill these horns, which could be 6 feet long, with mead, and that people would attempt to drink all the mead from these horns. So I dare say that would have been a form of initiation in itself, but a very different form. And of course, the way that our ancient ancestors viewed drinks such as mead and ale was very different to the way that they're kind of abused, I would say, generally in modern society. And these were sacred drinks, and would have been used, not always, I dare say, but would sometimes have been used in a ritual ceremonial context. So we have the symbol, the ritual drinking celebration. And when Beowulf first came to Hrothgar, there was a ritual symbol. So this was basically a way of establishing his identity and what his intent was. So, and it was done in a ritual context. So we also, Caesar mentioned the fittings, the silver fittings that were put onto these horns. Some of these were actually unearthed in Suffolk at the Sutton Hoo site when it was excavated. So these were great treasures. These were ritual items, highly prized, and they obviously brought them to England when these Anglo kings came and settled in East Anglia. And although Aurochs were never actually known in England, the Anglo-Saxons maintained that connection in this rune. And I'm just going to read you the Anglo-Saxon rune poem. The Aurochs is proud and has great horns. It is a very savage beast and fights with its horns. A great ranger of the moors. It is a creature of metal. So if we think back to our early ancestors, life was tough. We cannot even begin to imagine what it must have been like to survive in those kind of conditions, particularly if we think about the Ice Age, if we go right back. So to our early ancestors, brute strength would have been required for survival. So here, in its first position, in the Uthark, the very first thing that a human being needs before absolutely anything else can be considered is the strength to survive. And Uruz has a very primal, earthy energy about it. It's indestructible, it's raw, primitive, extremely strong. These are the kind of energies that we need to survive. It's a persistent kind of energy which strives for survival. So let's have a look at the rune, which I have here. There we are. Uruz. And one way I like to think about this shape is as a gateway. So again, if we think about its position as the first rune in the Uthark, it can mark new beginnings, that entering into a new situational state, and indeed entering into Erd's well. This rune is connected with the Norn, who looks after the past, Erd, and I don't know much about tarot, but as I understand it, my husband's a very good tarot reader. As I understand it, the tarot cards basically take you on a journey. So it starts with a Fool, and it then goes through various stages of initiation and progression. Now, I think the runes can also be viewed in this way as a sort of a progression, and we've seen how the runes later on in the rune row can be more about higher connection and connecting with that higher self. A lot of the runes earlier on tend to be about connections with the creation myth, as we'll see. But so in many ways this rune can be about entering into the underworld. unlike some spiritualities which tell us we need to look to the light, in the northern way of thinking, we have to look into the dark, and in the dark is where we will find the answers. So this rune, in its first position in the Uthark, can be about entering into Urd's well, back into the womb. You know, this is the womb from which everything is born. And you can think of this rune like, if you think of it in energetic terms, think of it as like a force, the energy which is needed to bring about manifestation and creation. It's raw, it's a creative energy, and this is really the kind of energy which we need to bring about any form of manifestation, which is obviously why it has links with the creation myth. So I'm just going to read you the Old Norse rune poem and the Icelandic rune poem, because they're both very different to the rune poem presented to us by the Anglo-Saxons. The Old Norse rune poem: dross comes from bad iron, the reindeer often races over the snow. Okay, and now the Icelandic rune poem: lamentation of the clouds, the ruin of the hay harvest, an abomination of the shepherd. So on the face of it, both of those are very different and don't have much connection with the primeval bovine, the Aurochs. However, if we look to the Prose Edda, and I have my copy here, if we look to the Prose Edda and we go to the Gylfaginning, the deluding of Gylfi, and we can read, Gangleri asked, how were things set up before the different families came into being and mankind increased? Hai replied, when those rivers, which are called Elvegar, came so far from their source, the poisonous flow hardened like a slag of cinders running from a furnace and became ice. When this ice began to solidify and no longer ran, poisonous drops spewed out and froze into icy rime. Then layer by layer the ice grew within Gigingagap. Okay, just as Hai said, that part of Gigingagap which reached into the northern regions became filled with thick ice and rime. Inside the gap there was mist and wind-whipped rain. So within that part of the Prose Edda, we have reference to slag, or which is obviously referred to or as dross or slag in the Old Norse rune poem, and we also have reference to rain, and which is mentioned in the Icelandic rune poem. And in the Anglo-Saxon we have Aurochs. Now many ancient myths contain a figure which was there before creation happened in the form of a cow, and we've obviously, I spoke last time about Ifhumla, and it's also in Vedic myths as well. So here within those three rune poems, a little tenuous, but you can see links to the creation myths, so that's interesting. Now if we look at the shape again, if we invert the rune like so, we can see that it's reminiscent of horns, which obviously we know that the thing about the Aurochs that they would keep as their prize, their sacred prize, was the horns. Now, for anyone that doesn't know anything about Vikings, they could be forgiven for thinking that they have horned helmets, which probably anybody watching this is going to know they don't. But that's basically a 19th century romanticism that was dreamed up by a costume designer for Wagner, I believe. But there is actually good evidence existing that horned helmets were used, probably ritually, in the Bronze and early Ice Age in Scandinavia. Some stone carvings survive that basically show these horned helmets, and also bronze helmets were found at Vixo in Denmark during excavations which date from around 900 BCE, which is about 1500 years before the Viking era began. Interestingly, there's also a depiction in a tapestry found at the Osberg ship burial of somebody wearing a horned helmet, which looks kind of reminiscent of these bronze horned helmets, which date from much earlier than the Viking period. So it's quite likely, you know, these are very fragile, and they don't show any signs of battle, and it's quite likely that these were used ritually, perhaps to represent a horned god. We'll never know. But it's interesting. Now, this rune is also very connected with health and vitality, and when it comes up in a reading, it could very well indicate health or lack of, depending whether it's in a bright stave or a murk stave position. And it can be used as a healing rune. It's one of the best runes to use as a healing rune. So, you know, if you imagine all of that strength and vitality and virility and power of an Auroch being crammed into a human body, that's how powerful this rune can be for healing. So yeah, and deity connections. This is of course associated with the Norn Erd. It also has associations with Thor, and I find it interesting that this time of year, during this runic half month, there's a lot of thunder, normally thunder and lightning storms. You know, the day of this peaked, it poured down, and we've had a few thunderstorms. You know, Thor is definitely visited during this runic half month, which is interesting. But I was thinking about how we're nearly at the point of Lammas, which is the Anglo-Saxon name for the festival, which happens around the beginning of August, which the Celts call Runester. And how, you know, harvest is going on. You know, at the moment, my dad's a farmer. I know he's been out on the combine gathering in the ripened wheat and barley. And I was thinking about Thor's wife, Sif, whose long golden hair is kind of reminiscent of the fields of grain ripening in the sun. So, interesting. But Thor is definitely connected with the next rune I shall be talking about. So, right, so I'm going to do some runic chanting now. Now, I kind of wanted to come here today, as this is such a healing rune, because I'm right on the flow, as I said, of the Mary line. These are basically, you know, these lines, they carry energy all around the country. So what I'm hoping is, by chanting this, oh, here comes a helicopter, by chanting this healing rune, I am going to be sending that healing energy off across the country by these dragon paths, by the Mary line, and will hopefully do some good for our country. So just wait for that helicopter to clear off, and then invoke the powers of this Rune Uruz. Send it off down the Mary line. Pop out at Norfolk on the coast, carrying that healing energy all around. I'm getting carried away now. Anyway, it might work. Let's try. Helicopter's gone, so. well, hopefully that has sent some healing energy off. I've had 3 lovely sheep sitting next to me this whole time. They're there just munching away happily. I think I've found before that sheep really kind of like drumming and runic chanting, which is kind of strange, isn't it? But it always feels a bit weird when you come back to reality after doing this. But anyway, you just snap out of it. I will be back. Only got a few more runes to do before I've been all the way around the wheel. So only have Verbalising, Answers and Rido to do, and then I've completed the wheel back to Canals at the autumnal equinox. So yeah, so I'll be back. Hope you've enjoyed this little trip around the runic wheel with Uruz, and please subscribe, and I will see you again shortly for more runes in Glastonbury, probably. Okay, have a good day, take care, bye.